If you clicked on this video, you're probably thinking about starting a Christian stationery business, but you're not sure how to do it or even where to start. Luckily for you, starting a faith-based business in 2026 is a lot easier than you think. And today I'm going to be walking you through the exact steps that you can take even if you're starting from scratch. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Caitlin if you're new, and I make videos about scrapbooking, stickers, and my Christian stationery business. As you can see by the title, I'm going to be diving into the steps that you can take to start that stationery business you've always wanted to start. A little disclaimer though, I am not a professional by any means. I've only been running my shop for a little bit over a year now. The only related education that I have is a Bachelor's of Business Administration in Marketing and Management, but most of what I've learned this past year has been from personal experience or hands-on application. I'll be discussing 6 points with you guys today, and keep in mind the order that I go in is not the order that you have to go in. Personally, for me, this is what I found to work best. However, I know for some people, you might have to do different steps out of order in order to figure out what's best for you and your business. Before we really get into like the nitty-gritty stuff, if you're a Christian, I would highly recommend praying and seeking out wise counsel before starting your small business. You may really want to start your business, but is it coming from a place of trying to be obedient and following God's will, or is it more so selfish ambition? It may also be wise to talk to people who've also started small businesses, not necessarily stationary businesses, but businesses in general, just to hear like advice and their experience through that. But I definitely think prayer is an essential part of the work. And so once you've talked it over with God, prayed about it, and kind of counseled with a few people, now we can take action. So the first step I would say is to conduct some broad market research. This is going to be part of your preparation phase. So the first part of this market research I would say is going to be product research. You want to be able to answer questions like, what kind of products do I want to make? How do I want to make and produce these products? And is there a possibility to scale them if I get bigger? A few categories you could dive deeper into in the Christian stationery niche could be Bible journaling supplies, prayer journaling stationery, Christian pen pal items, a regular sticker shop, or you could just broaden it and do stationery and paper products. Another arena of research that you should probably conduct is consumer research. So this would be answering questions like, is there a market or target audience that your products could reach? How big is the market? Meaning, is there a sizable amount of people to where you can make a profit? And where do these people normally shop? Just be able to answer questions like that. Seeking out thought leaders in your category or niche is also something really important that you need to do. There's a possibility that there aren't very many people who have excelled in your category, so that may be difficult to figure out what works and what doesn't work. However, if there are pioneers who have kind of paved the way for you, I would definitely learn and glean from them. Something else I'd mention for this point, even though it's not necessarily research, is analysis of, do you have the time constraints and do you have the budgetary capacity? I just ask questions like, do you have the time to invest into something like this? And financially, what are you able to invest? So the second point is going to be choosing a clear product niche. Once you've picked out the broad niche and products that you want to sell, now you can get into the specifics. Many people can get tripped up by this by switching the steps. So they research the specific and then find out later on that there's not an applicable niche, or they dive too deep into a target audience that doesn't really exist. So it's good to go broad first, and then you can kind of hone in on the specific. This is where you want to create a list of all the products you want to make or sell and all the supplies required to make or produce this product. From the product itself to packaging and shipping and any additional items that you want to include as a part of that. So the third point is going to be to choose a selling platform. From my experience, I've loved using Etsy just because the setup process was so easy. There was minimal kind of website work that I needed to do. However, a big con is that there are a lot of transactions and setup fees. So that's something that you kind of need to weigh and see what you want to do. I've had limited experience with Shopify, but I think I tried like the free version for a little bit. But I remember it being so overwhelming because I had to make so many decisions about like fonts and colors and layout design. And I just wasn't tech savvy enough to be able to do something like that. But if that's you, then I would totally go for it. But it's definitely more so an investment compared to Etsy, which has lower fees. I've also tried Big Cartel's free version, which has like 5 listings max. So if you want to list any more than that, you definitely have to pay for the non-free version. But compared to Shopify, it is a lot cheaper. However, you have less features and website design items that you can use. And so there's kind of that pros and cons as well. I also know that those two aren't the main platforms that you can use. I've heard of GoDaddy, and some people even sell on TikTok Shop if that's something that you're interested in. And just because these platforms don't work for me doesn't mean that they won't work out for you, and you don't really know until you try it for yourself. Another platform through which you can sell are pop-up shops or in a store somewhere. Again, I don't have any personal experience with this. However, if that's your personality type or you prefer face-to-face interactions, then this would be a great option for you. I also want to encourage to do your research on this because there's a lot of setup and renting fees that can be a huge part of that. I do want to add something. This is not necessarily a selling platform. However, you can sell to friends and family to gauge product interest and sellability. Of course, the caveat to this is there are going to be some people who are not comfortable with doing this, and also you want to sell to people who are in your target niche and audience. So don't go try selling your products to your entire family or friend group, just those who are solely interested. Despite which avenue you choose to go through, something that is a part of all of this is going to be branding. Sometimes people can focus too much on branding that it can overwhelm you and actually lead to passivity. You can always tweak and change the decisions that you make now, depending on the kind of voice you want to create or how you want to be perceived, things like that. So the colors you pick on day one are not permanent. You can change it up, you can rebrand if you want to. But I remember for me when I first started, I got caught up in like the logo design that I wanted to use, what kind of colors and fonts that I wanted to have. And I never really got to the actual meat of the business, which is the products themselves. But that's just a piece of advice that you guys can take with a grain of salt. Step number 4 is getting started and actually making your products. A lot of people do all this planning and research and fail to implement everything that they've learned to actually start and create the products. This step can be a really hard one because there is the fear of not knowing what's going to happen, feeling like you're wasting money, or just feeling stuck in the preparation phase. However, my advice for you is to pick one part of your small business that you want to work on and create an achievable goal. For example, if you want to work on the platform part of your business, you can select a website and make an account and just to see what that's like and the features and benefits. Another example is making a list of all the supplies that you need in order to make your product and then making a small purchase. If you want to get into manufacturing, do some research on some companies that you could go with, look at their reviews and see how they are as a company. Simple things like that can make the entire process seem less overwhelming. Once you've established a clear overall vision, narrow it back in and get started on the day-to-day tasks. You want to set yourself clear goals, whether that's daily, weekly, monthly, etc. If you're not a goal-oriented person, you could always make lists or work on things as they come to mind. Whatever works best for you is what you should do, and switching it up every now and then is not bad, especially if you want to prevent burnout. All right, step number 5 is to market your content. Okay, this step is optional, but you can market your content through social media, flyers, word of mouth, organic marketing, or other streams of marketing. I really like that Etsy's platform kind of already uses this organic marketing because people on the website typically are already planning to buy or search for something. It's just a matter of fact of how you can stand out compared to the competition. However, if you don't use Etsy, I would consider other options and ways that you can actually market your products. For me, what I like to do is make YouTube videos and then post pins on Pinterest. I used to post on TikTok and Instagram, but it became too much for me. And so the lesson I learned there is just to pick a few and stick to them consistently. If you can only do 2 platforms consistently, then do 2. If you can only do 1, then do 1. It's better to commit to a lower amount, especially if you know that other avenues and apps can overwhelm you. Now, when I say market your content, like what does that actually mean? It could honestly be anything in my opinion. It could simply be posting photos of your products. You can make short clips of yourself using the products or just displaying them. I know people also make like process videos and launch videos, so things similar to that nature are ways that you can market your content. Just remember that it can be as intricate or as simple as you like. All right, the last step is going to be revise and edit, basically the trial and error stage. This last step is not the end all be all because you'll want to continuously revise and edit your small business. Because you want your small business to grow, this ongoing analysis is an important part of the vitality of your small business. If something is not working, then change it, but also don't be afraid to experiment with something before switching gears. Your goal is not perfection, but along the way, you'll find things that work. And these are the things that you'll want to cling to and let go of the mess ups and all the mistakes that you've learned along the way. Try to see obstacles not as roadblocks, but as building blocks to the next best thing. If starting a Christian stationery business or just a stationery business in general has been on your heart, I hope this video encourages you to take that first step. You don't need to have everything figured out right away. Just start with what you have and trust God with the rest. It can feel very overwhelming at times, but remember that every shop you see started with someone just deciding to try. And if you want to follow along as I continue growing my Christian stationery business, feel free to subscribe because I make weekly vlogs and share other helpful videos on the behind the scenes of running my shop. Thank you guys again for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!